और 10 साल तक देश में यूपी
Hello and welcome. I am Ramesh Ramachandran and you're watching Newsnight on DD India, your prime-time destination for news and analysis. It's good to see you again. Right, it's 9 p.m. in New Delhi, 6:30 in the evening in Moscow and 10:30 in the morning in Washington, D.C. On the show tonight, we retain a sharp focus on the Omicron variant. The new variant of the coronavirus has affected the reopening of global economy. Governments are scrambling to decode the Omicron variant. Information, accurate and reliable information is scarce. Is Omicron more transmissible than the Delta variant? Is it more contagious? Does it cause serious illness? Can it evade a vaccine? And will a travel ban work? We'll try to seek answers to these and other questions on Newsnight. Also on the show, US and Russian foreign ministers to meet on Thursday amid Ukraine tensions. The US, Ukraine and the allies worry about an alleged plan by Moscow to invade Ukraine. Russia counters it by raising its own concerns about Ukraine's military buildup near the area of the separatist conflict in the country's east. We get you more. Plus news and updates from India and the world, all that and much more coming up over the next 1 hour. But first, as always, the headlines. 6 COVID positive cases reported after screening 3,000 odd passengers from 11 international flights from at-risk countries. Samples of positive passengers sent for genomic sequencing. All passengers from at-risk countries are being tested on arrival across India, home quarantine for 7 days if they test negative. Centre tells Maharashtra to follow testing directives issued by it after the state asks all international passengers to take RT-PCR tests and undergo 14 days of home quarantine, regardless of test result. Directorate General of Civil Aviation says resumption of all international commercial flights from 15 December is currently under review, given the challenge of the Omicron variant. Malaysia joins nations imposing travel ban from at-risk countries, says it is a temporary move. Brazil, Nigeria and South Korea report first cases of Omicron. South African President Cyril Ramaphosa describes arbitrary and discriminatory restrictions as unscientific and counterproductive. World Health Organization agrees to launch negotiations on an international pact to prevent and control future pandemics. Pact to cover issues from data sharing and genome sequencing of emerging viruses to equitable distribution of vaccines and drugs. WHO chief describes move as cause for celebration. Russia announces commencement of its regular winter military drills along border with Ukraine, says Ukraine has deployed half its army to Donbass conflict zone. Ukrainian president calls for direct talks with Russia. Goods and services tax revenues for the month of November touch another high at 1.31 lakh crore rupees. It's the second highest mop-up since its implementation. It's 25% higher than the GST revenue in the same month last year. Opposition creates ruckus in Parliament, disrupts Rajya Sabha proceedings over the suspension of 12 lawmakers. Lok Sabha Speaker too expresses displeasure over opposition behaviour. Lok Sabha reconvenes in the afternoon, passes the Assisted Reproductive Technology Regulation Bill 2020. And Andhra Pradesh and Odisha brace for a cyclonic storm. IMD issues alert says cyclone Jawad may reach coasts of Andhra Pradesh and Odisha by 4th December. Cabinet Secretary holds NCMC review meeting. Right, in news just coming in, 6 COVID-19 positive cases have been reported after screening 3,476 passengers from 11 international flights from at-risk countries in India. That's the news coming in this moment. A total of 11 international flights landed at various airports of the country except Lucknow from midnight to 4 p.m. this afternoon from the at-risk countries. Now, these carried 3,476 passengers. They were administered RT-PCR tests, wherein only 6 of them were found to be COVID-19 positive. The samples of the COVID positive passengers have been sent to INSACOG labs for whole genomic sequencing. Government of India continues to keep track of its evolving situation and supporting states and union territories in the fight against the pandemic through what is known as the whole of government approach. Right, so that's the news just coming in. 6 COVID positive passengers detected from international flights that landed in India. Right, let me now dive straight into our cover story. It's about the Omicron scare. But before I proceed any further, here's something I want you to consider. The Omicron is a cause for concern, but there is no need to panic. Scientists around the world are working overtime to understand this new variant, and governments worldwide are drawing up an action plan to best suit their national condition. India, for instance, has mandated its airports to enforce a strict quarantine and testing route for all international passengers. Also, Government of India says it's reviewing its 26 November decision to resume international flights from 15 December. That decision is now under review and new dates will be announced soon. My colleague Nitendra Singh has more.
The new travel guidelines for international passengers released by the Ministry of Civil Aviation came into effect from midnight last night. Airports throughout the country were directed to facilitate the RT-PCR testing of passengers coming from at-risk nations. All this amid the concerns of Omicron, the new variant of COVID-19. The ICMR approved 9 testing systems for COVID-19 used globally as being equivalent to an RT-PCR test. Further issuing a clarification, ICMR said that for travellers coming from countries not identified as at risk, a random sample of 2% of the travellers will be done. This number has been revised from the earlier 5% in the fresh guidelines issued on November 30th. Travellers undergoing random sampling may give the sample and be allowed to leave. The random sampling of passengers can be done at the discretion of the airport or the airlines. Post-arrival testing can be exempted if a person is travelling from a country considered not at risk and has only a transit in the at-risk country. However, if the person has travelled to any at-risk country in the last 14 days, he or she will be asked for post-arrival testing and other additional restrictions. Meanwhile, airports across the country have enforced strict quarantine and testing rules for international passengers amid concerns over the Omicron strain. At Delhi's IGI airport, seating arrangements have been revised for the passengers as per the COVID-19 guidelines.
Bilkul, everybody is afraid because uncertainty se there is a fear, और fear से there is a reaction like we are doing कि कोई भी कहीं से आ रहा है, जबकि यूक्रेन में कोई केस नहीं है, लेकिन फिर भी हमको काफ़ी इसके कारण मतलब there is a fear psychosis.
टेस्ट लेके वो रिपोर्ट देख के वो तब बाहर आने देंगे. उन्होंने बोला भी 3-4 घंटे लग जाएंगे रिपोर्ट में.
Given the growing concerns over Omicron, the centre has told the Maharashtra government that its guidelines are not as per the guidelines released by them. The Union Health Ministry has asked the Maharashtra government to comply with its guidelines strictly. Basically, the Maharashtra government's guidelines cover all passengers travelling within Maharashtra, flying from other states, besides at-risk and non-at-risk countries. All the necessary arrangements have been made at the Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj International Airport. Waiting area and seats have been increased at the airport. All international travellers will have to provide details of the countries they have visited in the last 15 days. Domestic passengers must have their negative RT-PCR report with them during the journey. All travellers from countries declared at risk by the central government will have to compulsorily stay in quarantine for 7 days. In their 7-day quarantine, passengers' RT-PCR report of the 2nd day, 4th day and 7th day should be negative. Amid all this, the Directorate General of Civil Aviation, DGCA, has said that the decision to restore international flights from December 15th is now being reviewed and new dates will be announced soon. It was only last month that the central government had decided to resume operations of international flights from December the 15th. The Gujarat government is also fully alert about the evolving situation and new guidelines have been implemented for those coming from abroad in the state. Strict vigilance and all precautionary measures are being observed at the Ranchi airport in Jharkhand as well. The Kerala government has also made elaborate arrangements in view of the new guidelines. Passengers coming from high-risk countries will not be able to leave the airport without a negative RT-PCR test. With Omicron scare looming large, new protocols and new norms for international travel will have to be redefined once again. With Nitendra Singh, Bureau Report, DD India.
Now, the world was just about finding its feet after nearly 2 years of devastation wrought by the COVID-19 pandemic when it was rattled again by the Omicron. And predictably, some countries responded by erecting new barriers to travel in an effort to contain the spread of the Omicron. From shopping districts in Japan to authorities in Malaysia, a familiar dread is rising about the renewed restrictions. More in the next report.
Malaysia has temporarily banned the entry of travellers from countries that have reported the Omicron coronavirus variant or are considered high risk. The Southeast Asian nation joins countries around the world that have limited travel from Southern Africa, where the variant believed to be the most contagious yet was first detected.
The Health Ministry on the 26th of November has listed the following countries: South Africa, Botswana, Eswatini, Lesotho, Mozambique, Namibia and Zimbabwe. And today we added Malawi in a temporary travel ban for non-Malaysian citizens from countries that have reported the Omicron COVID-19 variant or are considered high risk. The ban includes travellers with travel history to the countries in the list in the past 14 days.
A day after it confirmed the first case of the Omicron variant, Japan has stopped flight bookings. Ignoring a World Health Organization warning against blanket travel bans on Monday, Japan banned the entry of foreign flyers. The country has also started offering booster COVID vaccinations to healthcare workers. Shuttered out from large parts of the world, South African President Cyril Ramaphosa once again expressed his disappointment at such travel bans.
Standing united against the imposition of arbitrary and discriminatory restrictions that are not only unscientific but counterproductive in the long run. This is a global pandemic, and overcoming it requires that we collaborate and work together as a collective. The resulting damage to this travel ban to the economies of the countries affected will be considerable and long-lasting.
Meanwhile, Brazil has reported the first cases of Omicron variant in Latin America. Nigeria also confirmed its first cases of the Omicron COVID-19 variant among 2 travellers who arrived from South Africa last week. The Canadian province of Alberta too reported the first case of Omicron variant infection in a returning traveller who visited Nigeria and the Netherlands. On Sunday, health authorities in the Netherlands confirmed that the new COVID-19 variant was found in the country on November 19th and 23rd before the South Africa cases emerged. Acting Executive Director of South Africa's National Institute for Communicable Diseases, Andrian Pouren, said that scientists should know within 4 weeks to what extent Omicron can evade the immunity generated by vaccines or prior infection and whether it leads to worse clinical symptoms than other variants. Pouren said it was too early to say whether Omicron was displacing Delta in South Africa.
Right, the WHO is holding a news conference on the Omicron variant. Let's listen in.
Rest openly, and that we try to convince and persuade people to be vaccinated, as well as beefing up and intensifying surveillance, increasing and expanding testing, ensuring that clinical pathways are well managed and the right patients get the right treatment at the right time, ensuring that we engage and empower communities and ensure that they're supported and not left alone. This is not a time for governments to pass the full responsibility of containing this epidemic and pandemic back onto the shoulders of individual citizens. This is a time for governments to take action in solidarity with their communities, not in blaming their communities. And it is time for everyone to recommit ourselves to controlling the pandemic of multiple strains. Or multiple variants of the same virus. We will have to be a little patient in order to understand the implications of the Omicron variant, but certainly we are dealing with a crisis now, and that crisis is in Europe, and it's been driven by the Delta variant. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Ryan. Next question goes to Tomo Deguchi from Kyodo News. Tomo, do you hear us? It seems not. Then we're moving on to Carmen Paun from Politico. Oh, do we have Tomo back?
Can you hear me?
Yes, please. Go ahead.
Thanks for taking my question. Even after you sent out the advice last night saying that the blanket travel ban is not effective in preventing the international spread of the new variant, more and more countries are implementing such measures. Like Japan, they are now banning all known Japanese to enter the country. Could you please send a stronger and clearer message to the countries which are acting not based on scientific evidence? Thank you.
Tomo, we're not very sure if we understood everything right. It was quite interrupted, but if I get it right, it was about the possible travel restrictions put up by Japan right now in plan. Is that what you're asking?
Yes, basically. Could you please send a clear message that blanket travel ban is not effective on
yes, thank
preventing
you. Then
spread.
we have it. Then I'm asking Dr. Jouad Majour, Assistant Director General. Mike Ryan, maybe?
No, thank you very much. And as we say that a blanket travel ban will never stop the circulation of the virus, but instead what is needed is comprehensive approach based on real risk analysis and also based on evidence to doing things that does work and avoiding that definitely will not work. And of course, member states and countries, they have the right under the international health regulations to take additional measures to protect their countries. But these measures should be always based on clear public health justification, based on science, and also based on clear risk analysis and implementing the measures that can protect, but avoiding the measures can stop travel without protecting. Mike?
I agree with Jawad. And when we talk about a risk-based approach or enhanced methods, there are ways that you can de-risk travel in terms of having increased testing, more testing before departure, more testing on arrival, quarantine until negative testing. There's a whole series of things that can be done that will manage the risk of importation of disease or even exporting disease to another country, which falls short of blanket bans. There's also some inherent internal contradictions in these bans. We've seen these before, where you ban flights except for your own citizens. I mean, epidemiologically, I find it hard to understand the principle there. Is it that some passport holders will have the virus and some won't? Does the virus read your passport? Does the virus know your nationality or where you're legally resident? So therefore, there are contradictions in this. So our concern here is that we apply public health principles, not political principles, to selecting measures that are used to control the spread of disease, and that those measures are are targeted at reducing transmission of the virus while presenting the least possible imposition on individuals' rights and freedoms of movement, which is a cherished freedom all over the world. There are economic and social consequences to travel bans, particularly blanket travel bans, but there are circumstances in which in modifying travel, in reducing travel, and in adding more checks within the process of travel can help to reduce or at least delay the spread of some disease. But that in no way should be even used as a single measure. The Director General has said it, intensifying current surveillance and testing in countries. You are going to miss cases. They're going to come in your land borders. They're going to come in through third and fourth airports. So the idea that you can put a hermetic seal on most countries is just frankly not possible. We all know that. We've seen that happen before. And certainly there has to be consistency in that. If they are being applied, they have to be consistent. And certainly we've seen a lot of inconsistency with countries, for example, in Africa, having banned travel and they haven't had a single confirmed case, and other countries with confirmed cases and evidence of local transmission with no travel bans. So I'm not saying one is right or one is wrong. What I'm saying is I can't see the logic, certainly from a public health or an epidemiologic perspective.
Right, you are listening to a World Health Organization media briefing taking place in Geneva as we speak, where WHO officials were answering and taking questions from journalists worldwide. Right, now that gives me a perfect segue into my next segment. Time now for our In Focus segment, in which we are discussing about decoding the Omicron variant. And joining me are two guests, Professor G.C. Khilnani, Chairperson, Pushpavati Singhania Research Institute of Pulmonology, Critical Care and Sleep Medicine, New Delhi, and former head of Department of Pulmonary Medicine, All India Institute of Medical Sciences, New Delhi, and Dr. Soumitra Rawat, member COVID-19 National Task Force. Gentlemen, welcome to News Night. If I can start with you, Dr. Rawat, the news coming in that 6 passengers have tested COVID-19 positive, international passengers, and the samples have been sent for genome sequencing. Are we able to detect and determine whether this is indeed a COVID-19 case, or should we expect the worst?
I think, Mr. Ramachandran, we need to wait because what happened, there were cases in Bombay, there were cases in Bangalore as well. So there has been quite a few positive tests. Right. But unless and until we do the aggressive genome sequencing, it's difficult to find out whether it's B11529, which is a Omicron variant. So unless and until we do the full gene sequencing, it's going to be difficult to say whether it's Omicron variant or not.
Dr. Rawat, has the COVID-19 National Task Force met recently to, to decide the next course of action, so to speak, to tackle this latest challenge posed by the Omicron variant? I ask you this because is there, in a sense, within the task force as to the steps taken recently, including, for instance, mandatory tests at all airports for international passengers, and also the decision of the government to defer, possibly, the resumption of international flights from 15th December. So is the task force seized of the matter as we speak?
I think we are meeting regularly, and obviously what government is doing is absolutely right. That any passenger who is coming from a high-risk country, they need to have a corona test done in their country first within 72 hours of travel, and as soon as they land in India, they need to have a COVID test done again. And also, if it is negative, then you need to be in the quarantine for 7 days, then again test on day 8. So it is a very aggressive surveillance, and I'm pretty sure it will work, and we will avoid having an infection from outside. Obviously, one who are found to be positive, they are going to be going to the treatment center. So I think we have learned from the past, and what we are doing is, which is a universally recognized thing, so that the virus doesn't enter our country. But whosoever has come in last couple of weeks, and we are tracing and tracking those people as well.
Absolutely. Professor Khilnani, coming to you now, information is scarce, but questions abound. People are wondering aloud about this new variant, the Omicron variant. People are wondering, is it more transmissible? Is it more contagious? Does it cause serious illness? And does it evade a vaccine? So we'll try to tackle these questions over the next few minutes. But first, your brief overview on this situation developing as we speak. What do we know about the origin, spread, and symptoms, if possible, of the Omicron variant?
So, Mr. Ramachandran, we need to understand the COVID virus per se, to understand this new. And as we know for last 2 years that coronavirus keeps on mutating.
Right.
It will mutate more if it is in immunocompromised host, and whichever mutant or whichever variant is more contagious would survive, rest would die.
Okay.
So, like we had a catastrophe with Delta virus, it is, once bitten, twice shy. That's the situation. It's exactly what I perceive it. Now, this particular virus that is called Omicron virus is a variant which has suddenly, the WHO has declared it as a variant of concern because of the previous experience.
Right.
There are cases, of course. There are cases in South Africa, 200 to 300 cases. And what we have come to know that for the initial impression is that it is causing a very, very mild illness. None of the patients have gone into the ICU. None of the patients have died. Nevertheless, the contagiousness would be known only by epidemiological study. It is too early to say that it is more contagious or less contagious than the alpha, beta or the Delta virus. To my mind, the most important thing is that, one is scare, one is alarm, and one is panic. It is good to be careful, it is good to be alarmed, but panic is always counterproductive. So therefore, we should realize that COVID pandemic was still on, it is not gone anywhere, variants are coming and going. So once you have found something, it is better to be careful. And if you want to be careful, then you have to stop the transmission. So how do you stop the transmission? The foremost thing is vaccination, which is going on in India at a very, very good drive, I would say. Second is COVID appropriate behavior, which we have actually forgotten during Diwali, Dussehra and all those things. If you go to the areas, the masks are conspicuous by absence. I think in a way this Omicron virus has brought the alarm, or you can say the panic to us, and this is going to be good for us because now we have seen that the vaccination lines are becoming longer. People who had hesitancy are not hesitant about getting vaccination. In fact, people are asking when will we get the third dose. So I think all money should be put in educating the people that not to get
absolutely
into
without doubt,
but follow the COVID appropriate behavior, and only the time would tell about the contagiousness, but the preliminary reports say that it does not cause severe disease. Thank you.
Right, fair enough. Dr. Rawat, now people watching this broadcast, I'm sure, must be wondering, what is genome sequencing, why is it important, and is it a definitive answer to these questions? I mean, is it transmissible, is it contagious, does it cause illness? I mean, could you just demystify this term for the benefit of our viewers, genome sequencing?
I think I will tell you first thing, whenever the virus comes, and then you need to talk about whether it's a virus of interest or virus of concern.
Okay.
So every virus or every mutation happens. Suppose if it is getting more in various countries, initially they say it's a virus of interest.
Okay.
Then it becomes a virus of concern. Virus of concern, it is more infectious, more virulence, and it has a immune escape mechanism.
I see.
Whereby if you had a vaccine then the efficacy of vaccine decreases slightly. So we know that this virus is more infectious, but regarding a virulence, we don't have any information at the moment. And what the president of Medical Association of South Africa, she commented about 2 days ago that none of the patients who had a Omicron virus illness in South Africa, none of them are serious. So obviously WHO, what they have done is, this virus was reported to WHO from South Africa on November 24th. And last Friday, I think it was November 27th or 28th, it was made virus of concern.
Right.
So I think they have taken a very cautious approach. I think it will take 2 weeks more to know how virus is behaving.
Right. Professor Khilnani, you've spoken about how now is as good a time as any to continue to follow COVID appropriate behavior. By that you mean social distancing, wearing of a face mask, washing one's hands regularly, and of course vaccination. Now, does it put additional incentive for people everywhere in the world, including India, to actually go in for full vaccination? Now is the time to go for it, isn't it?
There are
absolutely, and you would have seen.
Sorry, Dr. Rawat, I'll come back to you in just a minute. But Professor Khilnani, please carry on.
Yeah. So far, so good. All the vaccines, whether it is Pfizer, Moderna, Covaxin, or Covishield,
right,
have been effective against alpha, beta, and delta viruses.
Okay.
That's a good news. Whether those vaccinated people will be protected against the Omicron virus, most probably yes. But there are few things which I like to point out.
Sure.
That mRNA vaccine is actually a very fine vaccine which has a spike protein antigen. Now, to be effective against this variant, that mRNA vaccine may need to be changed, and Moderna has already said that they will take 3 months to change the spike protein in that vaccine for it to be effective. But the Indian vaccine, that is the Covaxin, it's a whole virus vaccine. Now this vaccine contains more antigens than, it contains spike protein, it contains nucleocapsid antigen also, and several more antigens.
Okay.
This is a whole virus vaccine. It is likely to be more effective against all the variants. The Covishield is in between. So therefore, the Delta virus, the vaccine was 10% less effective, even mRNA vaccine. But I strongly feel that, and this is not based on any kind of reports, nobody has that kind of reports,
right,
that vaccinated people will be protected, and we know that vaccine reduces the chances of infection, but much more is that it reduces the severity of disease and also the death. So to my mind, that all money the country should put besides the the care which is taken at the airport by testing, and which Dr. Saab has already elaborated in great detail. Most important thing is that the state will do its own job, but there is a responsibility on the part of the individuals also. And few things I would like to say, that there is a proven that in-house dining in Colombia led to more mortality and more cases. The indoor meetings, indoor large gatherings in the air-conditioned environment leads to more transmission. Also, so it is important for us to understand that social gatherings are super spreaders, especially in the closer environments. So please avoid those for the time being. If you want to enjoy with your own family. If you want to meet people, meet in the open. Don't meet in the closed area. In-house dining should be avoided. And if you don't follow this, and I feel that who knows that this Omicron has already not entered India? Nobody knows that. You are not testing everybody with sequencing.
Right.
And it might enter, or it might, but what will protect you is vaccination and the behavior. And it is a time to redo it before the catastrophe occurs.
Indeed,
and
extra
that's
cautious.
What my advice would be. Yeah.
Absolutely. Dr. Rawat, I'll give you the last word. I am running out of time, maybe under a minute left on this discussion. So very quickly, if you don't mind, the two broad actions. In fact, I'm told that Dr. Soumya Swaminathan in the WHO is addressing the media as well. So maybe we would like to cut in and listen to her. I'm told she's just finished her intervention there. But Dr. Rawat, just a quick comment from you. The two broad responses have been, one, to impose a blanket travel ban, and the WHO says that is inadvisable. The other issue some countries have chosen and opted for is mandatory vaccination. Your thoughts on these two issues, blanket travel ban and mandatory vaccination?
I think I will go for the second one. Because we at the moment doesn't know what is the virulence of the virus. So if the passenger is tested before they board the plane,
right,
and they are tested again at arrival, and then again tested on day 8, so obviously you are testing them on 3 different occasions. So I think that is what I would suggest. Blanket ban. I don't know blanket ban how good it's going to be, how effective it's going to be, and obviously if somebody is coming in an emergency, then obviously it's going to be a very emotional thing. Absolutely. If they cannot come.
Right. On that note, may I thank both my guests, Professor G.C. Khilnani and Dr. Soumitra Rawat, for making time for us here at DD India. Appreciate it. Thank you. Right, and shifting focus to the other big story we are tracking here on Newsnight tonight. President Vladimir Zelinsky of Ukraine on Wednesday called for direct talks with Russia as tensions mounted over claims that Moscow is laying the groundwork for an invasion. Now, Zelensky's call came as NATO looks to counter what it says is a build-up of Russian troops on the border with Ukraine. For its part, Russia blamed the escalation in tensions on the West, supplying Ukraine with modern weaponry, conducting drills in the Black Sea and flying bombers near Russia's border. Meanwhile, U.S. Foreign Minister Antony Blinken is set to meet his Russian counterpart Sergei Lavrov in Stockholm on Thursday.
The situation along the borders of Ukraine and Russia continues to draw attention. In the latest development, Russia has announced commencement of its regular winter military drills in its southern military district, parts of which border Ukraine, and about 10,000 troops have been relocated to training grounds across the huge area. Russian Defense Ministry also stated that the drills would also take place in Crimea, the Black Sea Peninsula, and in a Russian region bordering Donbass.
Ukrainian armed forces are setting up their military presence near Donbass conflict zone, deploying heavy weaponry and manpower. According to some reports, their number has already reached around 125,000. If someone doesn't know, that is half of all the Ukraine's armed forces.
Reacting to the development, Ukraine turned to NATO to impose economic sanctions on Russia. Amidst all this, heightened security was visible in front of the Ukrainian parliament building, where President Vladimir Zelinsky made his annual speech. He called for direct talks with Moscow.
We must tell the truth that we will not be able to stop the war without direct negotiations with Russia. And today this has already been recognized by all.
NATO foreign ministers arrived for the start of a 2-day meeting in Riga on Tuesday, in which they discussed Russia's military build-up close to Ukraine's border. NATO had earlier called on Russia to be transparent and to de-escalate and reduce tensions. In a discussion on the flare-up, President Vladimir Putin said Russia would be forced to act if its red lines on Ukraine were crossed by NATO. Referring to the recent large-scale exercises that were conducted near its borders, he added that Moscow views the deployment of missile capabilities on Ukrainian soil as a trigger. Newsnight Desk, DD India.
In other news, a 15-year-old U.S. student opened fire at his high school on Tuesday, killing 3 teenagers before surrendering to the police. 8 others, including 1 teacher, were wounded in the attack. It's the deadliest U.S. school shooting so far this year. Before Tuesday's incident, there had been 138 shootings in schools across the U.S. in 2021.
Scenes outside the Oxford High School in Michigan, USA. Bodies being taken away, security drills on, 3 students have been shot dead and 8 others, 7 students and 1 teacher, reportedly injured after a 15-year-old opened fire with a semi-automatic handgun. The assailant has been arrested.
About 12:51, we had over 100 911 calls into our dispatch center of an active shooter at the Oxford High School, which is right across the way there. You've all seen it. Deputies responded and within 5 minutes had the suspect in custody. It was a semi-automatic handgun. He'd fired multiple shots.
Those killed were a 16-year-old boy, a 17-year-old girl and a 14-year-old girl.
When they took it from him, he had a loaded firearm and he was coming down the hall. That, again, I believe, interrupted what potentially could have been 7 more victims.
President Joe Biden expressed his shock while reaching out to the parents of the students killed.
My heart goes out to the families enduring the unimaginable grief of losing a loved one. But you've got to know that that whole community has to be just in a state of shock right now.
According to Education Week's 2021 school shooting tracker, there have been 28 school shootings this year, 20 since August 1st. There have been 86 school shootings since 2018.
This is a uniquely American problem that we need to address, but at this juncture, I think we need to focus on the community, the families, supporting all the first responders, including the incredible people at our hospitals that are working so hard to save the lives of those who are fighting for their lives right now.
The gun laws debate in Michigan has been revived after the shooting with calls for aggressive action. This year alone, at least 50 firearm-related bills have been introduced in the state. Democrats want new criminal penalties for adults who fail to keep weapons out of the hands of minors. The gun control debate in the US is equally divided and was a major issue in the last presidential poll. Newsnight Desk, DD India.
And in news from the 3rd day of the winter session of Parliament, Rajya Sabha was adjourned for the day at 3:05 p.m. as opposition members continue their protest over the suspension of 12 lawmakers. Meanwhile, in the Lok Sabha, members of the TRS continued their protest over farmer issues. But later, the Assisted Reproductive Technology Bill 2020 was passed by voice vote.
Glorious scenes continued in both the houses on the 3rd day of the winter session of the Parliament. Witnessing some sloganeering, the Lok Sabha managed to conduct question hour and zero hour. Rajya Sabha, on the other hand, couldn't function at all as the opposition continued ruckus over the suspension of 12 members of the House. The lower house witnessed interventions by the TRS members on farmers' issues. Speaker Om Birla raised serious objection to the repeated sloganeering by the TRS members during the question hour.
सदस्यगण, आप सदन के सदस्य हैं, वरिष्ठ सदस्य माने बोल रहे हैं, आप उनके आगे तख्तियां ले रहे हैं। क्या सदन में मर्यादा बनाना चाहते हैं आप? आपके इश्यू पे मैंने आपके कल नेता को बोलने का पर्याप्त समय पर्याप्त अवसर दिया है। ये सदन में आपका तरीका न्यायोचित नहीं है।
In response to a question on electrification, Railways Minister Ashwini Vaishnaw informed that the work on the electrification is going on as per the schedule and 72% of the target till 2022 has been achieved.
As on 1st November 2021, out of the 64,689 route kilometers of broad gauge, 46,776 route kilometers have already been electrified, Honorable Speaker Sir, which is 72% of the entire target which we have kept for completing within 2022.
When Lok Sabha resumed business post-lunch, Health Minister Mansukh Mandavia moved the Assisted Reproductive Technology Regulation Bill 2020 for consideration and passage. The bill was later passed by a voice vote.
कोई ऐसी प्रैक्टिस कर ले जिस प्रैक्टिस से कोई महिला को नुकसान हो जाए, कोई कॉमर्शियल ओवम और एम्ब्रियो बेचने लगे, प्राइवेट बिजनेस करना शुरू कर दे,
ये तो समाज के लिए बहुत दुखद स्थिति साबित कर दे, ऐसा हो सकता है। इसलिए ये सारी स्थिति में, कोई सभी स्थिति में किसी को जेल भेजना ऐसी आवश्यकता नहीं है। ये सब चीजों को रखते हुए इस बिल में हमने प्रावधान किया है।
Rajya Sabha, on the other hand, witnessed repeated adjournments as the opposition continued ruckus over the suspension of 12 members of the House. Rajya Sabha Chairman Venkaiah Naidu said there is no remorse of the members who've insulted the parliamentary system and urged the protesting members to let the upper house function.
I advise the members, if you are determined, you don't want to have 0 hour very important issues. 10 important issues are there. Special mentions are there. You don't want special mentions. You don't want 0 hour. You don't want house to run. Crores of rupees are being spent on this house and people are getting dismayed for what is happening in this house.
Parliamentary Affairs Minister Pralhad Joshi took a jibe at the opposition members who protested near the Gandhi statue inside the parliament premises and appealed to them to come inside and participate in the debate.
कल भी आप नहीं थे, डैम सेफ्टी के बिल बारे में हम पारित कर सकते थे, लेकिन अपने आप सरकार के तरफ से मैंने निर्णय लेके उसको पोस्टपोन किया हूं। आज चर्चा होने दो, क्योंकि हम भी कंस्ट्रक्टिव सजेशन और ओपन डिबेट सरकार चाहते हैं, इसलिए हमने कल पोस्टपोन किया है। कम से कम आज आप आइए, चर्चा में भाग लीजिए, और अगर 12 एमपी आना चाहते हैं तो वो रिग्रेट व्यक्त करने दो, पश्चाताप व्यक्त करने दो।
So on day 3 of the proceedings, while Rajya Sabha could not transact any business, Lok Sabha managed to take up interventions by the members on matters of urgent public importance. Parliamentary Team, DD India.
Andhra Pradesh and Odisha are likely to be hit by a cyclonic storm by Saturday. The India Met Department is closely monitoring the situation and developments over the Bay of Bengal. It said the low pressure system is likely to move west-northwestwards, concentrate into a depression by 2nd December and further intensify into a cyclonic storm over the Bay of Bengal central area over the subsequent 24 hours. It's likely to move northwestwards, intensify further and reach near the northern Andhra Pradesh-Odisha coast by the morning of 4th December.
3rd दिसंबर सेंट्रल बे ऑफ बंगाल के एरिया में ये एक साइक्लोनिक स्टॉर्म बनने का चांसेस है। उसके बाद ये जो इसका जो मूवमेंट का जो डायरेक्शन ऑफ मूवमेंट वो कंटिन्यू रहेगा और 4th दिसंबर मॉर्निंग टाइम्स में ये नॉर्थ आंध्र प्रदेश एंड उड़ीसा कोस्ट के आसपास में पहुंचने का संभावना। इसके वजह से 3 तारीख के शाम से लेकर रात तक आपका कोस्टल उड़ीसा में बारिश होने का संभावना है।
Meanwhile, northern India might experience severe cold weather in December and January. India Meteorological Department Chief M. Mohapatra said there is a possibility of below normal temperature in many parts of the country between December and February.
ये आगामी सर्दियों के मौसम दिसंबर 2021 से फरवरी 2022 के दौरान उत्तर पश्चिम भारत के कई हिस्सों, दक्षिण और उत्तर पूर्व भारत के अधिकांश हिस्सों और हिमालय के तलहटी के कुछ क्षेत्रों में न्यूनतम तापमान सामान्य या सामान्य से अधिक होने की संभावना है। उत्तरी आंतरिक प्रायद्वीप के कुछ हिस्सों में न्यूनतम तापमान सामान्य से नीचे रहने की संभावना है। देश के अधिकांश हिस्सों में अधिकतम तापमान सामान्य से नीचे रहने की संभावना है। केवल उत्तर पश्चिम भारत के कुछ हिस्सों और उत्तर पूर्व भारत के अधिकांश हिस्सों को छोड़कर जहां अधिकतम तापमान सामान्य या सामान्य से अधिक होने की संभावना है।
Meanwhile, Cabinet Secretary Rajiv Gauba held a review meeting of the National Crisis Management Committee to deal with the situation arising out of the impending cyclone in the Bay of Bengal. Director General, India Meteorological Department briefed the committee about the current status of a low-pressure area in the Bay of Bengal. Chief Secretaries and senior officers from Andhra Pradesh, Odisha, West Bengal and Andaman and Nicobar Islands apprised the committee of the preparatory measures being undertaken. The NDRF has deployed 32 teams in these states and additional teams are also being kept in readiness. Rescue and relief teams of the Army and Navy along with ships and aircraft are ready for deployment if required. Prime Minister Narendra Modi on Wednesday announced the launch of Infinity Forum, In a tweet, the Prime Minister said, I quote, "On Friday, 3rd December at 10 a.m., a very interesting program will take place to mark the launch of Infinity Forum. This is a thought leadership forum with a focus on aspects relating to fintech and using it for inclusive growth," unquote. In another tweet, he said, and again I quote, "The Infinity Forum has an interesting theme, Beyond. As the name suggests, it will set the tone for stakeholders to think beyond conventional mindsets and approaches and discuss new trends in space tech, green tech, agri-tech, quantum computing and more," unquote. PM Modi also said, quote, "I would urge my young friends, especially those in the world of startups, tech and innovation, to know more about the Infinity Forum and take part in the program on the 3rd," unquote. The goods and services tax revenue for the month of November has topped 1.31 lakh crore rupees. That's over $13.3 billion. It's the second highest mop-up since its implementation. The central GST was 23,978 crore rupees or $3.2 billion. The state GST was 31,127 crore rupees or over $4.1 billion. The integrated GST was 66,815 crore rupees. That's nearly $9 billion. The cess was 9,606 crore rupees or over $1.2 billion. Now, for the second straight month, the total GST collection crossed 1.3 lakh crore rupees. The revenue for the month of November is 25% higher than the GST revenue in the same month last year and 27% over the figure in 2019-2020. The union government had released 17,000 crore rupees to states and union territories towards GST compensation on the 3rd of last month. Meanwhile, India on Wednesday joined the G20 Troika, which consists of Indonesia, Italy and India, the current, previous and incoming G20 presidencies respectively. Now, the G20 is the premier forum for international economic cooperation. It reflects a recognition that global prosperity is interdependent and our economic opportunities and challenges are interlinked. The G20 countries have come together to better prepare for the future. As a founding member of G20, India has used the platform to raise issues of vital importance and those that impact the most vulnerable around the world. Indonesia assumed the G20 presidency on Wednesday. It will convene various G20 meetings throughout the year, culminating in the G20 Leaders Summit on 30th and 31st October 2022 under the theme of Recover Together, Recover Stronger. India will assume the G20 presidency on 1st December 2022 from Indonesia. India will host the G20 Leaders Summit for the first time in the year 2023. Sonam Wangchuk, an innovator and engineer from Ladakh, has thanked PM Modi and the PMO for sending a team to find a solution to making the Leh airport carbon neutral. Wangchuk had earlier shared images of the PMO team as well as that of a thermometer and bottle of coconut oil showing the effects of carbon neutrality. He said it reflects PM Modi's vision of carbon neutrality.
First of all, I want to express my gratitude and want to say that I'm most impressed by the quick response from the authorities, from Airports Authority of India to Civil Aviation Ministry to the Prime Minister's office about this tweet that I made a few weeks ago appealing to rescue the Leh airport from becoming a bad example of a carbon intensive airport to a carbon neutral airport. Today it is most significant that the Prime Minister has declared Ladakh a carbon neutral zone, and moreover the Honorable Prime Minister also announced that India aims to become carbon neutral by 2070 in COP26 at the international forum. So it is very important that we walk our talk and make this airport an example of that vision.
Now, Wang Chuk, in a 13th November tweet, had urged Prime Minister Modi to intervene and save the Leh airport. In a 2-minute-long video, he spoke about the ongoing construction of an airport at Leh. He not only pointed out architectural flaws in the building, but said it has no traditional element to it. He reminded PM Modi about his statement that the government of India would develop Ladakh as a carbon-neutral destination. To sports now. In a nail-biting match of Junior Men's Hockey World Cup between India and Belgium, the hosts beat Belgium 1-0 to set up a semi-final clash with Germany. India went into the first half with a 1-0 lead, courtesy a Shardanand Tiwari strike in the second quarter. That goal proved to be the solitary goal in the match and the difference between the sides. In the dying moments of the game, Belgium earned their third penalty corner, but an excellent save by Pawan helped India win the game. Now, India will face Germany in the semi-finals, while Argentina face France in the other semi-final. And Tokyo Olympics gold medalist Neeraj Chopra will visit Sanskar Dham School in Ahmedabad on the 4th of December. With this visit, Neeraj will launch Prime Minister Narendra Modi's mission to spread awareness about balanced diet, fitness and sports. The event will be held as part of the Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav, celebrating the country's 75th year of independence. More in this report.
The Sports Authority of India and Ministry of Education will run Meet the Champions program over the next 2 years as part of Azadi Ka Amrit Mahotsav, celebrating country's 75 years of independence. In continuation to the celebrations and Prime Minister Narendra Modi's appeal to all Tokyo Olympians and Paralympians, Tokyo Olympics gold medalist Neeraj Chopra is all set to visit Sanskar Dham School in Ahmedabad on the 4th of December to spread awareness on balanced diet, fitness as well as sports. Earlier, during Tokyo Olympics and Paralympics medalist meet and greet session with the Prime Minister on 16th of August, the Prime Minister urged Indian Olympians and Paralympians to visit 75 schools each and spread awareness on the importance of fitness and balanced diet.
जिस देश का बचपन स्वस्थ न हो, वो देश भी कभी स्वस्थ नहीं हो सकता। और एक बहुत बड़ा सामाजिक काम मैं आपको इसलिए कह रहा हूं, स्पोर्ट्स पर्सन जब कहता है तो इस विषय में वो विश्वास करता है, हाँ यार देखिए यहाँ तक पहुंचा तो खाने में उसने नियमों का पालन किया। लेकिन आप एक लेक्चर तैयार कीजिए और उनको समझाइए, और मैं समझता हूं कि एक बहुत बड़ी सेवा होगी।
On this, Minister of Sports and Youth Affairs Anurag Singh Thakur tweeted, Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi ji gave a clarion call to our Olympians and Paralympians to visit schools and interact with students on the importance of Santulit Ahar, fitness, sports and more. Starting December 4th, Neeraj Chopra will be at Sanskar Dham School in Ahmedabad to launch this mission. The Prime Minister mentioned the importance of food and nutrition in one of the edition of Man Ki Baat program. Students from across the state of Gujarat are expected to join the interaction session with Olympic gold medalist Neeraj Chopra. Ahead of the interaction, Neeraj Chopra tweeted, looking forward to interacting with students from 75 schools at Sanskar Dham in Ahmedabad on Saturday. Excited to be a part of this initiative by Honorable Prime Minister Sir. Other than Neeraj Chopra, Tarandeep Rai, Sarthak Bhamri, Sushila Devi, Avani Lekhra will also visit different schools in other parts of the country and spread awareness on balanced food diet, fitness and most importantly, the importance of sports. Sports Desk, DD India.
And with that, it's a wrap. But news continues here on DD India. You can catch all the latest updates on our social media, mobile and digital platforms. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.